Hello, amazing fifth graders. Get ready to buzz with excitement as we dive into the fascinating world of flowers and a super important process called pollination. We'll learn all about the different parts of a flower, how they make new plants, and the incredible ways pollen travels. By the end of this, you'll be flower experts. Are you ready to explore? Hi everyone, let's start with the basics. What exactly are flowers? Well, they are usually the most attractive and colorful part of a plant. Think about roses, sunflowers, or lilies. But they're not just pretty, they have a very important job. The main function of a flower is to produce seeds. And what do seeds do? They grow into new baby plants. Flowers are incredibly diverse. They come in all sorts of sizes, shapes, colors, and even smells, from sweet to, well, not so sweet, as we'll find out. Here's a cool tidbit. Not all flowers show off their beauty during the day. Some flowers, like the moonflower or certain types of cacti, bloom at night. They do this to attract pollinators that are active after dark, like moths and bats. Isn't nature clever? Okay, let's become flower detectives and look closely at its different parts. A typical flower has 4 main whorls or parts. Think of them as layers. We'll explore each one, but the main ones are the sepals, petals, the stamen, which is the male part, and the pistil, which is the female part. Understanding these parts is key to understanding how flowers make seeds and how pollination works. Get ready to draw and label these in your notebooks later. Did you know the largest single flower on Earth is the Rafflesia arnoldii? It can grow to be about 3 feet across and weigh up to 15 pounds. That's one giant bloom. First up are the sepals. These are usually green and look like little leaves at the base of the flower. Together, all the sepals are called the calyx. What's their job? When the flower is just a tiny bud, the sepals act like bodyguards, covering and protecting the delicate parts inside. Then, when the flower blooms, the sepals often stay there, supporting the colorful petals. So, they're pretty important for keeping the flower safe and sound. Here's something interesting. While sepals are usually green, in some flowers like lilies and tulips, the sepals can be just as colorful as the petals, making it hard to tell them apart. When this happens, they are sometimes called tepals. Next, we have the petals. These are often the most eye-catching part of the flower. All the petals together are called the corolla. Petals can be white or come in almost every color you can imagine. They help us tell different flowers apart. Some flowers have a lovely scent, and many produce a sweet sugary juice called nectar. Why are they so colorful and sometimes smelly? And why do they make nectar? It's all about attracting helpers like insects and birds. Bees visitors play a crucial role in pollination, which we'll learn more about soon. Remember our Connect activity from the textbook, where we thought about which flowers attract bees and butterflies, like marigolds and roses? Bright colors, sweet smells, and nectar are big reasons why. Science buzz. Get this, not all flowers smell sweet. The Titan arum flower is actually known as the corpse flower because it smells like rotting flesh. Yikes! But there's a reason for this stinky smell. It attracts flies and beetles that are looking for decaying matter, and these insects help pollinate it. Nature is full of surprises. Now let's talk about the male reproductive part of the flower, called the stamen. All the stamens together are called the androecium. That's a key word from our lesson. Each stamen usually has 2 main bits. there's a long, slender stalk called the filament. As mentioned in our Check Your Progress questions, the filament is part of the stamen, not the pistil. At the top of the filament is a sac-like structure called the anther. The anther is super important because it produces thousands of tiny, often yellowish-orange grains called pollen grains. These pollen grains are like tiny messengers carrying important information for making new seeds. Did you know? A single flower can produce an incredible number of pollen grains, sometimes thousands, or in some plants, even millions. This is to make sure that at least some of them reach their destination for pollination. All right, moving on to the female reproductive part of the flower, which is called the pistil. All the pistils in a flower are collectively known as the gynoecium, another key word. And as we saw in Check Your Progress, a collection of pistils is called the gynoecium, not the androecium. The pistil also has distinct parts, typically 3. At the very top is the stigma. The stigma is often sticky or feathery, so that it can catch and hold onto those pollen grains we just talked about. Connecting the stigma to the base is a tube-like stalk called the style. And at the bottom, there's a swollen part called the ovary. Inside the ovary are tiny structures called ovules. These ovules are what will become seeds after pollination. And guess what? The ovary itself often matures and develops into the fruit that contains the seeds, like an apple or a berry. Here's a neat connection to something you might have eaten. You know the silky threads at the top of an ear of corn? Each one of those strands is actually a style, and the very tip is a stigma. Each silk strand leads to an ovule that can become a corn kernel. So, for every kernel on a cob, a pollen grain had to land on a silk strand. Now that we know about stamens and pistils, let's talk about how flowers can be different based on these parts. As our learning outcomes state, we need to distinguish between unisexual and bisexual flowers. Uni means one and bi means two. So, a unisexual flower is a flower that has either only the male parts, stamens, or only the female parts, pistil, but not both in the same flower. Plants like papaya, cucumber, pumpkin, and watermelon have unisexual flowers. This means some flowers on the plant are boy flowers and some are girl flowers. On the other hand, a bisexual flower is a flower that contains both the male parts, stamens, and the female reproductive parts, pistil, all in the same flower. Many common flowers like lilies, hibiscus, as our Check Your Progress correctly states, hibiscus is a bisexual flower, and sunflowers are bisexual. It's interesting, for plants with unisexual flowers, some, like papaya, have separate male and female plants, but other plants, like cucumbers and pumpkins, have separate male-female flowers, but they both grow on the same plant. Nature has so many strategies. So, we've learned about pollen grains in the anther and the sticky stigma on the pistil. Now, how does the pollen get from the anther to the stigma? That's where pollination comes in. Pollination is the super important process by which pollen grains are transferred from the anther of a flower to the stigma of the same kind of flower. This is a crucial step for plants to reproduce and make seeds, which helps them make new baby plants. After pollination, the flower can develop into a fruit containing those precious seeds. Pollination also helps us grow more food because it improves crop productivity. Now, pollen can't just fly on its own most of the time. It needs help, comes from agents of pollination called pollinators. That's a key word. These can be insects like bees and butterflies, but also bats and birds. Even wind and water can help move pollen around. Think about our connect activity again. Those butterflies and bees are important pollinators that are attracted to flowers like marigolds and roses. And as Check Your Progress reminds us, pollination helps plants reproduce. Wow, listen to this. Bees are tiny but mighty. They are responsible for pollinating about 1/3 of all the food that we humans eat. That includes many fruits, vegetables, and nuts. So next time you see a bee, remember how important it is for our food supply. There are two main ways pollination can happen, and our learning outcomes want us to differentiate them. The first one is called self-pollination. Self means it does it by itself or within its own family, so to speak. Self-pollination happens when the pollen grains produced by a flower land on the stigma of the very same flower, or they might land on the stigma of another flower, but on the exact same plant. This is possible for bisexual flowers because they have both male and female parts right there together. As our Check Your Progress question highlighted, bisexual flowers are capable of self-pollination. Plants like peanuts, some orchids, peas, and tomatoes are good examples of plants that can self-pollinate. That's pretty efficient. Some self-pollinating flowers, like certain types of peas or violets, don't even need to fully open up to get pollinated. They can transfer pollen from anther to stigma while the flower is still closed, like a little secret operation. The second way pollination can happen is called cross-pollination. Cross means going from one to another. So cross-pollination occurs when pollen grains from a flower land on the stigma of a flower on a different plant, but it has to be a plant of the same kind. For example, pollen from one apple tree flower goes to another apple tree flower on a different tree. Unisexual flowers, which have only male or only female parts, absolutely have to cross-pollinate to reproduce. They need pollen to come from a different flower. Many plants, including strawberries, tulips, apples, plums, and pears, undergo cross-pollination. Our Check Your Progress asks for examples, and plants like apples and pears are perfect for this. Science Buzz. Here's a cool advantage of cross-pollination. It tends to produce plants that are sturdier, healthier, and more diverse. It's like mixing different ingredients to get a stronger and more interesting result. This variety helps plants adapt better to changes in their environment. Wow, we've learned so much about the amazing world of flowers and pollination today. Let's quickly recap the main points. Just like the mind map in our textbook, we discovered the 4 main parts of a flower: the protective sepals, calyx, the attractive petals, corolla, the male stamen, androecium, which produces pollen in its anther and has a filament, and the female pistil, gynoecium, which has a stigma, style, and ovary containing ovules that become seeds. We learned that flowers can be unisexual, with only male or female parts, or bisexual, with both. Then we dived into pollination, the incredible journey of pollen from the anther to the stigma. We saw there's self-pollination happening on the same flower or plant, and cross-pollination happening between different plants of the same kind with the help of wonderful pollinators like bees, butterflies, birds, bats, and even the wind. You are all pollination experts now, and should be able to answer any contextual questions about these topics. And here's a final thought to munch on. Without pollination, our world would be very different and much less tasty. We wouldn't have many of our favorite fruits like apples, cherries, almonds, or even chocolate. because the cacao trees that give us cocoa beans rely on tiny insects called midges for pollination. So, thank a pollinator today. Great job, super scientists. You've successfully explored the incredible process of pollination. Remember how important flowers and their tiny helpers are for making new plants and even for the food we eat. Keep observing the flowers around you, and maybe you can spot some pollination in action. See you next time for more amazing science adventures.